Good afternoon and welcome to today's Proud City webinar, Empowering Effective Digital Government from the Top. My name is Ellis Johnson and I'm the Digital Content Coordinator for ELGL and an MPA student at UNC Chapel Hill. Our goal with these webinars is to highlight digital standards and best practices, focusing on key topics relevant and pertinent to government leaders, and we highly encourage engagement, whether it's online via the webinar chat or on social media. For those of you who would like to engage with the presentation via social media, you can add us at the following handles, at GetProudCity and at ELGL50, and make sure you include the hashtag LocalGov. Before we begin, I want to let you know that your microphones and conference phones will be muted, and this helps make the webinar enjoyable and efficient for everyone. After the presentation is finished, we'll open up for questions, and you can submit them anytime using the chat box on the left-hand side of your screen. I will moderate the questions as they come in, and so we can include those questions in our recording of the webinar. So joining us for today's webinar is Cristine Alilovich and Rebecca Woodbury with the City of San Rafael, California, and Luke Fretwell with Proud City. I'll now turn it over to Luke for introductions and to get the presentation started.
Thank you, Ellis. And just for clarity's sake, the folks on the West Coast pronounce it San Rafael. Am I right, Cristine and Rebecca? We had this discussion this weekend about that at the event in San Francisco, and we were saying how that's how we filter out whether people are from California or not, and how they say San Rafael. Thank you again, Ellis. As you said, I'm Luke Fretwell with Proud City. We are a digital government platform and software as a service company that provides government solutions around websites, online forms, and payments. It's really great to be talking with Cristine and Rebecca. We've worked a little bit with them over the past, let's say 12 months. Really kind of had a front row view to a lot of what San Rafael's been doing on the digital front, holistically working with Cristine and Rebecca and just the general team in San Rafael across all the agencies. So it's really been great to have a front row view of that. And I think that the leadership team is pretty exceptional, and it's really an honor to be talking with the two of you. And I guess just to kind of start things off, Cristine, you have an IT background, but you're the assistant city manager. Do you want to just kind of talk about the role as sort of the leader on the digital front from the top? You want to start off by talking about the role that you play or that you've played in kind of enabling and facilitating this new approach to digital within the city of San Rafael?
Sure. So thank you, Luke. It's a pleasure to work with you as well. Our IT department reports directly to me, so I oversee the operational aspects of how IT is deployed throughout the city. And then Rebecca also works in our office, in the city manager's office, and she's responsible for community engagement. And so I think to answer your question about, how are we doing this IT thing in local government, we're really in a period of transition where the way IT has been thought about in public sector and local government agencies has been about keeping computers going and buying servers and hardware and software and systems and programming, and really having kind of this backbone of IT in a world of proprietary systems and a lot of kind of laden bureaucracy around how we purchase and procure our systems and how we know what it is that we need. And it's a really exciting time for IT and government, I think. It's also a challenging time to make this transition to try to truly keep pace with IT. I think, everybody says technology is always changing and it's changing so quickly, but the rapid escalation of the change, particularly in GovTech, I think has made it more challenging for us in local government to kind of catch up. When people are used to being in a role and doing a particular job a certain way for 5, 10, 15 years, and then all of a sudden things shift and change, it makes it really difficult to not just keep pace with technology, but to evolve one's vision so that where people are going and what we're investing in, how we're deploying our resources is really smart and the best place to do that. So I'm pretty sure I'm not even answering your question, but I'm just kind of starting with kind of generally where I think we are. We have made some pretty significant, I think, leaps with trying to make the shift. And what I guess what I mean by the shift is kind of an older model of thinking of kind of keeping the ship afloat and keeping a whole bunch of systems running and going and desktop replacements to a more user-centered design focus, where we're really looking at this combination of what do users need, and that comes from this, the private sector world has created a set of expectations for, kind of what customer service looks like, and it looks like being able to, the quintessential, it looks like being able to deposit your check mobilely over your phone. And so we're in a world where we don't really have the tools and resources and model to deliver that sort of real-time digital technology to our customers, which are people who want to get a building permit to build a fence in their backyard. And so we've got antiquated process that we're trying to modernize and evolve, and trying to find the right technology and tools that will match that. So that's what I mean, I guess, by being in a transition and trying to move to kind of a more modern way of thinking about how do we get these tools in people's hands, and then trying to keep up with what the market, what technologists really are creating and what's really available. So that's a lot of change and transition to be keeping up with.
And how I'd answer that question as well, just to kind of augment what Cristine said, is, she oversees IT, which is, what is the technology that our people are using to do their jobs, and then she also oversees HR, which is the people that do these jobs. And so there's a lot of time to be spent on how do we function more efficiently, and there's the connection between the technology that we're using and then the training and the people side of deploying that technology. And so I think there's a strong connection between that. And I think that in my mind, that's what Cristine and I spend a lot of time thinking about.
Yeah, I think the big word for me when I think of what you guys are working on is this holistic approach. And, oftentimes it's our meetings management software sucks, let's get a new one. Our website sucks, let's get a new one. And it's very reactive. And I think you guys are really thinking proactively and holistically. And I guess just to riff off of that, there's getting into the holistic proactive mindset. Cristine, from your perspective, what was the moment or what was the impetus for you to really start to take the city digital innovation seriously, from really
What happened? I don't know. Luke's not on here anymore.
I think he is trying to connect back.
Oh, okay. I can finish that question. So, Cristine, what was the impetus for you as a city executive to start to take digital innovation seriously?
Well, Rebecca, that's a really interesting story. So a couple of years ago, I started this job at the city of San Rafael, and I got my master's in public administration about 17 years ago, I was going to say 20, but I don't want to sound that old. So 17 years ago, I got my master's in public administration, and I've worked in the government agencies since then. And I really thought I worked on a lot of IT projects, and I really thought I understood what it took to deliver and deploy good processes, good services, and how to do that in a way that was modern. And I was very humbled. Rebecca told me that I needed to go to this Code for America conference, and I said, I don't really have time for that. I don't need to learn how to code. And she said, no, it's not really about that. You really need to go to this. And so I think I'll tell you about that experience in a minute, but it's important to note that I think one of the most important things that government leaders need to be doing in this realm is to really be willing to accept that they don't understand this stuff, and be willing to be really vulnerable about asking questions and being willing to be educated and not know and be really uncomfortable with that. So that's kind of what happened when I did agree to go to this Code for America conference, and within a couple of hours my mind was kind of blown. I had a major kind of paradigm shift around realizing that I was really out of the loop and out of date as it relates to what's really happening with all these exciting kind of new ways of thinking around how we deliver services in the public sector, and also just the general excitement about new possibilities. I think one of the frustrations that a lot of us who work in local government feel is the pace at which we're able to manifest change and to try to meet new demands for improving our services. Is the pace at which we can deliver and make those changes happen can be very slow at times, and that's another whole conversation about why that is. But a lot of what I learned about it at Code for America, and subsequently as I've opened myself up to learn more, is that things don't have to be that slow, and that part of the way we do that is by starting small and trying something and iterating on it and making some mistakes and being willing to take some risks to not have it all figured out and perfect ahead of time, which is kind of a typical government thinking, is that we've got to have a perfect product and it's got to be vetted, and it takes 2 or 3 years, and by the time we implement whatever that is, whether it's a tool or a process, it's slightly obsolete already, and it really doesn't meet the need. And that's the kind of what I would call the dying practice of how we work in government. But there's still a lot of attachment to that. There's still a lot of infrastructure and a lot of cultural attachment to the way things have been done for years and years. So we've got to honor that. There's value in really thinking things through and doing them right, but there's also a really important new and exciting way of doing things, which is to pilot things, start small, and continue to grow and evolve them so we can make progress on things and keep moving.
Yeah, totally. And Rebecca, do you have anything to add from your perspective? I mean, you sort of grown up with this mindset, but is there anything that's really clicked for you or turned on that we need to think differently, bigger, holistically, and proactive about this?
No, I mean, I think I've been really inspired by by actually Cristine's evolution, because I think, well, and I don't mean that, and I think it's been really a neat experience to, because from my perspective, so I don't have the same experience that Cristine has had in government. She's worked for larger organizations. Her career is longer than mine. And so I've been actually really interested and have learned a great deal from her experience and how she has been kind of thinking about this. And yeah. I guess for me, I've just, since we've been starting to work on this, just really been excited about her commitment and dedication. She definitely is somebody who walks the talk, and she walks really fast. So I mean, I feel like for so long I've been wanting to move quicker, and now I'm like, okay, Cristine, let's slow down. but it's been exciting, and I think, you know, just to the effect of like constantly learning and constantly exposing yourself to things that you're, you know, feel a little out of your league, I think is really important, and just to never get too comfortable.
Yeah.
I also want to add back, if you're okay with that, Luke, to what Rebecca said, because I think one of the challenges is having, in a local government agency, having some leaders at the top who are really willing to take some risks and to support their staff who are coming to them with these ideas that are really new and different, to allow them and empower them to take some risks and to do some things differently. So just go back to Code for America for a minute. One of the things that we did is there was 4 of us that went to the Code for America conference from the city of San Rafael, and we were so inspired and excited about taking these ideas and putting them into action in our community, that we wrote a document that we titled an Innovation Manifesto, and I don't know how many, it was 5 or 6 pages long, that really kind of captured how we wanted to bring this new way of thinking into our city and how we do business. And we brought it to our city manager, Jim Schutz, so just to continue to pay forward the props on this. Jim also has, he's got 25 years in local government experience and leadership. And to his credit, he said, wow, that sounds amazing. I've got your back, and let's do some of this stuff. And one of the first things we did was we decided, yeah, we do need a new website. And then, you know, part of walking the talk isn't just saying, yeah, these are good ideas, but when Rebecca took, I'm just going to focus on our website project for a second, Luke, I'm sure you won't mind. When we decided we were going to go out and do an RFP for a new website, I said, okay, it's yours, take it, lead it, make it happen. And then when she came back and said, well, you know, we really want to look at this company that's open source, and I don't even really know what that means, and it sounds scary, and our police officers aren't going to like it because it's not going to be secure, and all these kind of crazy, uninformed, ignorant assumptions about kind of where technology is in government right now, and was 2 years ago or a year and a half ago when we started that project. But to her credit, I said, well, prove it to me, and she did. She worked really hard and built a really strong business case that's articulated why we should move in this direction, and it's been a crazy, wild success. So it really does take a partnership and a willingness to, you know, find ways to make your leaders in local government comfortable with taking some of these risks, and in order to kind of push the envelope into trying something new.
Yeah, and there's you know, like I think between, you know, the 3 of us and Kevin, like there are tons of anecdotes and stories that we have, backstories on, you know, us all working together. One of my favorite is, Rebecca, you can tell this best, but there was a conversation the 2 of you had, and, you know, Rebecca, you said something, and this gets into kind of the, you know, the emotional intelligence and you know, understanding like what you don't know and trusting others. And I think, Rebecca, you said something like you felt empowered enough to be able to say something to Cristine about, you said that we, you know, I can't remember what it was. And then Cristine was like, yeah, you know, you're right. And there was just this conversation that happened that to me was like, you know, symbolized sort of the relationship, but also like the conversations that a lot of people have and maybe get shut down. But in your case, you know, Rebecca, you felt like you could, you know, say what you needed to say and really get heard out from Cristine. Do you remember that? What was that conversation? It was like,
I don't know. That sounds like a lot of conversations that we had.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. But no, I mean, I think like she did really challenge me to explain my recommendation on how to move forward. And this actually brings to mind a conversation, Luke, that we had on Saturday, not you and I, but just at this event that we were at around government and civic technology, around what is risk. right? And I really think that public sector needs to evaluate what they mean when they say what is risk, because I would argue that the status quo is incredibly risky in a lot of ways. And so I think we really need to challenge ourselves around our definition of what is risk. And the risk is moving forward in a more in the status quo way of doing things. That's for me, that's what risk is. So I think that, you know, what I really had to prove was why going with a startup was actually less risky than going with a government technology firm that is really tried and true and used by hundreds of millions of governments all across the world, and why I had to really prove, like, going with a startup that is built on a WordPress platform is not risky. There's actually a lot of safeguard in using a platform like that. So, yeah.
I think what Rebecca is saying, maybe this was the conversation, Luke, is government executives are really comfortable when they can benchmark to all these other agencies and say, it's worked everywhere else, so it means it's going to work here. And that's kind of a part of the culture of being in government, is there's a lot of security, and maybe it's false security in some cases, as Rebecca's referring to, that if it's been tried and true in other agencies, it's going to work here too. And it doesn't, that doesn't take into consideration quality per se. It's just what's been able to kind of take hold in, you know, kind of proof of concept that it's out there, and so that must be, the assumption is that must be the best way to do this. So the other thing that brings to mind about what Rebecca pushed me on, I think, was when we were in a kind of a beta design and we were ready to push the website up. And this kind of gets to that concept of iterating and risk-taking again, which I think is important. And I was a little uncomfortable with, well, is it all ready to go? Because typically what we've done with websites is we spend 2 years vetting the content and making sure everything is perfect and exactly the way it should be. And I think, you know, when Rebecca challenges what is risk, I think we also have to challenge what is readiness and what is done. Because the thing really, a website really should never be done, right? And it's also that the idea that an interactive website, which is what you want people going to it and using it, that the best way to have it be more done and more complete and a better tool is for people to use it and then tell you what's not working about it, and then you fix it, and it doesn't take a million years, and you don't have to be a programmer or a coder to fix the website. And that's worked really well, to be able to make real-time adjustments and improve it as we go. And I did have to push her a little bit to help me get a little bit less uncomfortable with the idea of pushing something out there and having it be live, and maybe having it not be perfect in the way that we're used to putting products out there from, or services out there from a government, a more traditional government perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, just to riff a little bit on an earlier comment you made around, you know, startups and, you know, going with somebody that it doesn't have a million customers that they've locked in and sucked all the energy out of the life of the internal team. But how do I really feel about that? But, you know, I think, you know, what's the saying, like, no government wants to be first or last, right? So it's like, I think, you know, there's always going to be, you know, folks like you that take a risk and then prove, like, look, this is actually a better alternative, or this actually works and nothing happened. So I think that, you know, it's just one of those things that from where we sit as a startup, that's, you know, that's really hard to get our heads around. But, you know, it's really like we see it with, you know, getting the champions. We always focused on getting, you know, finding the people that really are focused on exponential impact, and then you'll find another one, and then you'll find another one, and then they'll all start coming out of the woodwork. But it is challenging, and we see that every day. I think the other thing about sort of government and this concept around beta is still very new, and you're always in beta. If you think about sort of the age that we live in now, you're always in beta. You're always going to be responding to something, and if you have the right mindset, you're going to be responding to it and making it better. And just continuing, it's a continuous feedback loop. And I think that's something that, is harder for folks, not just in government, but anywhere, to get their heads around. But I think that's starting to really change as, it's your perpetual beta. And, there's this false sense of completeness. If you think that you're done with any technology, public-facing technology product, there's, if you think that you're, quote, done, you're, in denial. So I think, you both have touched on some of this already, but I think, I want to talk about, digital innovation and context, and both, legacy thinking and kind of modern innovation. And we kind of, I half joked about this at dinner a few weeks ago, but, Proud City, we were talking about, we need to come up with a term that just describes the problem. And, my thought was, let's just create a disease like gov-webitis. And we can just say, oh, they have gov-webitis. And we can just reference that as it's this, and this. You have gov-webitis. And I think that, just to kind of expand on that, and if there was some sort of gov-techitis, disease that's been plaguing local governments for decades now, how do you guys, you're going into kind of digital and modern innovation, how do you define sort of, gov-techitis or this legacy approach, and, what is sort of the cure for it? And you've talked about user-centered approach, you've talked about a little bit about Agile, but it'd be great to just kind of hear you both sort of give a synopsis of, what's old and what's new.
So how about I'll take the what's old and Rebecca can take the what's new.
Okay.
That's what we know better.
I think it'd be funnier, though, if we switched that around. But
So the legacy approach, I think one of the things that, and I'm not, my preface here is that I'm not trying to slam any technology companies right now. However,
I can do that. I can do that for you, Cristine.
Okay. I think part of the legacy approach that's really hard for me to see and now become aware of, and that I'm trying to be very mindful of in my role in approving technology purchases for the city, is that there are a lot of technology companies that have been operating in the public sector, providing a proprietary system that has a unique purpose for tracking permits, or all kind of a number of government service delivery tools. And what's happened over time is that the users, our users, I'm talking about internal city staff who use these systems, become very attached to the tool. It's what they know, it's what they're comfortable with. They also develop relationships with those vendors over time, and also know and trust those vendors or those humans that are representing those companies, that this is the product that they need to have in order to do the work that they do. And some, not all, but some of those companies are continuing to kind of perpetuate a model that, as though it's the only model or the only option, and it's not. And so, and a lot of local government managers, I would say kind of a program manager level folks, are the ones who are engaged in contract discussions and upgrades and investing in the next version of the same product or software or tool. And to some extent or another, at times, I think might be being even taken advantage of. And that's, in other words, taking advantage of the lack of awareness of all the alternatives that are out there. And that's what I see our role as in IT leadership in a local government agency, is to be aware of that, be aware of where options are being presented as very limited, and this is the only tool that's available to you, or the only type of tool that's available to you, and really broadening our scope when we're evaluating, should we continue to use this tool? Is this the right way to be delivering the service? Should we be delivering the service at all? These are the questions that we should be asking every time a vendor is coming to us and saying, you know, you need an upgrade, or you need this new thing, or we're evaluating what we're doing. And we have to kind of start back with why are we even doing what we're doing, and does it make sense to continue doing, and really be aware of what other alternatives are out there in the GovTech world to possibly do a better job. And Rebecca can talk about this, but one of the other legacy ways in which local government is asked to procure technology is to make these very long-term commitments, like 5-year commitments, and very expensive licensing agreements and implementation costs. And a lot of the other solutions that exist really aren't that expensive, don't require these multi-year commitments. It's very hard for me to completely understand how it is that some of these companies expect us to make a 5-year commitment when technology and our services should be evolving. So to make that sort of commitment doesn't really make any sense to me anymore, but yet it's really what's being pushed and what's out there. And so part of it also is educating folks that aren't in technology, who are, you know, code enforcement folks and public works folks, to understand that when these companies are coming and trying to sell these products to you, that you really need to consult with other experts and other people in the organization to make sure that it really is the best solution.
Yeah, and I believe that the technical term for a vendor trying to get a long-term commitment from government is called Lockin. So, and you know, we see that a lot. Rebecca, do you have anything else to add on the sort of the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what we're trying to do is take, like you mentioned, a user-centered approach to solving problems, and that is both internal and external users, right? So we want to make sure that the interfaces that our staff are having to interact with every day are modern interfaces. We want to make sure that the technology is making their life better. We want our employees to like being at work. And so I think using tools that actually make their life better is what we're really looking for. And we're also trying to attract the next generation into government work. And I think that the tools that people are going to have to use to do their job is going to be something that keeps them in government or not. And so I think our internal users are very important. And then our external users, we have to meet the expectations that Cristine kind of talked about earlier around what people expect and what they deserve in 2018. I also think we need to, and you know, to talk about the issue of lock-in, we need to procure technology that is more flexible, more adaptable. We need to be looking at things that have monthly or annual contracts versus multi-year contracts. And we also need to, whenever we can, take a more agile and iterative implementation approach so that we can learn as we go, we can pivot when we need to, we can fail fast, and we can just, ensure that once we roll things out and when we continue to roll things out, that they're meeting the needs, right? That we're not just doing it for the sake of doing it. And I think that really also speaks to the idea that we really need to take an outcome-based approach to the solutions and the services that we're providing. So if something isn't producing the results that we need, we really need to evaluate that, and we have to stop just doing it for the sake of doing it. And we really need to evaluate the outcomes and the usage of these things. So if some piece of technology is really expensive and the utilization rate is incredibly low, we need to understand why, and we need to have those really honest conversations. And too often, I think that, government spends a lot of time, a lot of resources deploying something, and they find out that it didn't work exactly the way they wanted, and they don't do anything about it. They just keep moving forward. They just keep on the course. And I think we need to build in really, we always talk about, we're going to, 6 months down the line, we're going to evaluate this. Well, how honest is that evaluation, and how willing are you to actually do the hard thing of doing something different, which might mean canceling that contract and trying something new. So yeah, that's what I would say about, how we're trying to do things differently.
Yeah, I think that's important. Like just letting go. I've had conversations with CIOs who have said the same thing. The big secret is that no one, the public doesn't use X, and they don't know. Like there was a public launch, it was a big deal, and they don't know. They just can't get their head around. It's like, okay, now we need to get rid of this. Because no one's using it, and they just keep extending it because that's sort of the safest option. I think moving into specifics. You've talked a little bit about Proud City and working with Proud City, but there's been a lot of other things that going back to sort of this holistic approach and being much more proactive and having an intent into how you're addressing, all of the systems within the city. You want to talk a little bit about, what you've implemented to date and what your plans are for the future. And, if anything, what have you discussed that's just could be a possibility?
So, one of the big things for us over the past year was rolling out a new website with online payments, online forms. Also, part of that process, we also procured our first kind of CRM system. So that was a big kind of operational change for how we intake questions and issues from the community. And so that was kind of the last year. And now we're looking, one of the things we're actually in really early-ish talks with, but getting more serious, is a company called Ride Along. We're super excited about this. They've developed a software tool that gives police officers information about people with mental illness, and they give them this information when they're at the scene. So this information helps our officers with de-escalation techniques, personalized service referral options so that the officers can actually help people get connected to the services that they need. And this company actually spurred from a Code for America fellowship with the City of Seattle Police Department, and now they have formed a company, and so we're in talks with bringing them to San Rafael, and we're super excited about that. So I guess that kind of illustrates just that we're really interested in seeing, how can we how can we really solve pain points through technology, and how can we find these tools that are going to make a big difference in the lives of our employees and the people that they serve, right? And I think Ride Along is a really good example of identifying a big pain point that's out in the community, not just for our staff, but for also people that we're serving in the community, and seeing if there is some sort of tool that can resolve that. So, yeah, there's a lot on the horizon, I think, but a big thing is also looking at our existing tools and modernizing them. So, we're about to embark on an upgrade of our ERP system, and there's just we're doing a lot around digitizing public records. There's so many needs. Every single department is doing a lot with technology. Our library has kind of always been on the forefront. They've kind of almost at times led the rest of us into the future. So our library is always doing exciting things there. But really, I think what we're focused on is every time we approach one of these new kind of pain points and how are we going to solve this, is now really taking the time to do a user-centered approach, which means asking questions and involving the people that use the technology every day. So that's your frontline staff, so that these technology decisions aren't just getting made by, say, a director who actually has never logged into the tool itself, but really the staff that are logging in and using it day to day and making sure that they're involved in solving their own problems and pain points.
Yeah, that's great. So, I think that when people hear kind of, you're in Marin County, you're in California, you're near Silicon Valley, there's a lot of sort of resources that you have. But the reality is, you're a mid-sized city, I'd say 60,000 residents, and, you don't have, your budget is, probably similar to a lot of cities your size, so you don't really have the resources to have like Boston or New York or even like the federal government, these kind of large scale digital teams that can, have developers, have front end designers, and have a big team. So do you want to talk a little bit about, how you guys have kind of hacked your own kind of San Rafael digital service team?
It's Rebecca.
No.
She's our digital service team. No, we also do have an IT department who's active in consulting and working with us on these projects. It really, I think, is a little grassrootsy.
Yeah.
It did start with our web development team, or the team that Rebecca put together to implement our new website, and getting folks throughout the organization who it's not their primary job to be in technology, but to help really, I think, in our case, you're right, we don't have the resources to put together a whole digital team. And so I think the best approach to making sure that we have folks who are able to work on this, and in some ways it can be even better, is that we're kind of integrating the digital service approach in the folks that are subject matter experts in the service delivery area. So like our community services department and our community development department, we have folks on the web implementation team and the Romulus, the CRM implementation, who really got a lot of education and awareness through that process of what it takes to implement these tools and why they're so important and how to think from a user-centered design perspective. So then in their own departments, as other technology needs or process or service issues come up, they're there kind of as an advocate and a voice and an internal person to help evaluate and select new technology and tools. So I think that's the way a city our size really needs to do it, is to integrate the role and some of that expertise throughout the organization. But I also do think that having the central IT and really having the city manager's office, at least in a city agency, is also really important, because, and this kind of gets to the role of procurement, I am taking the potentially unpopular role at times of requiring that IT purchases are vetted through the city manager's office, and sometimes the operating departments might not like that because they want to make their own decisions and they know best, and we don't want to micromanage their operation. However, it's more of like an intervention than it is a micromanagement, with the intent of vetting or approving all those IT purchases is to really try to start to mitigate for some of the legacy things being perpetuated and to stop them before they become contracts, and to, maybe it is the right thing to do, but to take a really hard look at it before we just kind of march ahead with the locked in and get ourselves locked in before we know if there are other newer alternatives. So
nothing to add.
Nothing to add.
I mean, I would just, the only thing I would add is to kind of call out the importance of building capacity in others. So I think we definitely see our role as helping to empower and provide the support and the training and the inspiration at times for people to understand the role that technology can play in their day-to-day jobs. And so, yeah, I think it's about building the capacity because we do not have a digital team. We can't do it any other way. So.
Yeah, I think to add to that, like just, from what I've seen and, heard both from folks at sort of these innovation offices, but also, people who have, been on, quote, the other side. I think that there is this, when there's a centralized team, there's this sort of us versus them or cool kids, coming in and telling us what to do that creates this dynamic of friction. And, there's not this sense of collaboration. It's like, oh, these folks are coming in and telling us what we need to be doing because they're so smart. And I think having decentralizing the digital leads and empowering point people in each of the different departments so that they can, translate to somebody like Rebecca or somebody who is, is leading kind of a holistic vision of where digital needs to go. I think that's, especially for smaller cities, is, really, it's necessity, but thinking about that strategic and saying, okay, we need to pick a point person for each of these agencies and establish them as a digital lead is really the only way that you're going to create any sort of sustainable change. And my favorite example is I was meeting with a presidential innovation fellow in DC a few years ago, and he was saying, basically the program, it dropped me into an agency, and this was like a large global agency. And, I had to like kind of figure out the ways and do all these things to kind of, there was no like process for having me, facilitate change. So he's like, what I did was I started having brown bag lunches every week and started finding, the champions in each of these agencies that would just show up. And immediately once we started kind of, quote, appointing people to the various departments or agencies within that, big organization, that's where it really started to take off. So I think like having kind of this decentralized, really kind of the category leaders or category experts in these different agencies and, having them be the digital point and creating sort of this, quote, digital team is really brilliant and kind of the future of, local government. Like most people just go, well, we don't have, like we've had these conversations with cities or we don't have the bandwidth to have a digital team. And they're looking at it from the perspective of like, you have to have an office with people and roles and things like that. And I think that, like what you guys have done is really a great example of, hacking a digital office. So I want to flip over to you, Cristine, and as a leader, I'm looking at the notes that Rebecca left on this question. There are times when you kind of have to, you have a vision or you think things need to go a certain way, but there are a lot of people who, haven't really caught up to what needs to happen or don't see the vision. And a lot of times, I know I'm like this, you're just like, let's just do it. But you really have to, especially your role as, assistant city manager, you have to kind of check your own ego and start to really trust others and even like saying, okay, they can execute this. And so for somebody like you, especially who has a technical background and now, you kind of see like things can happen faster or there is a better way. What have you learned, about sort of ego, emotional intelligence, as as a leader with respect to kind of empowering others and moving from kind of legacy to modern?
So I did look at these notes, and I did laugh because Rebecca said, "Good luck with that one, Cristine."
Yeah.
That's her talking point for me on this one. The first thing that comes to mind that I think is really the most critical is being willing to be wrong. Mm-hmm. And for a leader, I would say in any industry, that's hard to do. You get to where you are because you're the one that has the experience and the credentials, and you're supposed to have all the answers. You're supposed to know everything because you're the most, in quotes, experienced person in the room, or that's why you have these direct reports and people come to you all day and ask you to make decisions and tell them what to do. And that's I would say from a cultural perspective, at least in local government, I think that's a really common experience that government leaders feel like they're supposed to have all the answers. And so I'm answering this kind of broader than just technology, because I think that's something that we need to be evolving, not just around technology, but around how we're leading. And so when I say being willing to be wrong, it also kind of infers being willing to be taught by others, and often be taught by others that are less experienced in the world of work and life, aka younger than you. And that's also a challenge sometimes. There are generational differences that exist in the workplace, and there's a lot for us. When I say us, I'm in my 40s, so there's a lot for us to learn from folks that are coming into the workforce now in their 20s and 30s who have a different perspective and actually really know a lot more about this stuff than we do. So we've got to humble ourselves and get over ourselves that we have all the answers. Yeah. And I do think that I'm never going to know as much about this stuff as Rebecca is, and I need to just be comfortable with that. And I think that more government leaders need to be deferential and say, okay, what do you think and why? And even if it doesn't make total perfect sense to me, be okay with trusting that she has, you do that in other areas. You do that, I help run a city with a city manager, but I don't know how to pave a road. You trust your people who are experts in what they know and what they're great at. You hire great people and you let them do great work. So it kind of goes along that theme. I do think that this area is a little bit more challenging, and for lots of reasons around kind of how we think about how, the boss is supposed to make the final decision, and in a lot of cases, and have all the information. And in order to really keep pace and evolve in this way, we've got to let some of that go.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, and speaking from personal experience, I mean, as somebody who is also in their 40s, and, the Proud City team is all a much younger generation, I think, from a career perspective, it's actually probably been one of the best career moves for me, is to work with folks that are, much younger, and be able to say, I don't really have all the answers. And, they have a lot of answers. So shout to Kevin and Alex and Jeff, if you're listening. So, we've been talking about all this stuff, and it sounds like, we're painting this picture like everything's been perfect. Like this has been a smooth process. There haven't really been any blockers, but, the reality is that there has been, I'm sure. And without getting into what those are, can you talk a little bit about, specifically, but can you talk about, what has been sort of the bumpy part of, transitioning over to something new, and thinking about, technology and digital government, and just, I guess from a technology side, but also a cultural side, what have been sort of the road bumps, and what have you guys done to work on addressing them?
Bandwidth is just a continual issue. Just finding the time, creating the space, and really making that possible for others to do the work. We get into a hamster wheel, and then it's not just the hamster wheel of the everyday work, but then there's all the emergencies that happen. And I think that it's really difficult to continually be very intentional around putting the time in to do this kind of work that takes time when you're talking about culture change with your workforce, around really transforming how somebody does their job and involving them in that takes work and time and empathy, and in a fast-paced world, it's just a constant barrier. And I don't know how have we addressed this, how have we done this. I don't know. I think we're figuring that out. We all wear a lot of hats. It's like not one person's job to do this, and I think that's tough. And like just speaking to the small organization, one of the things that we are working on is we've launched a citywide initiative that we're calling Together San Rafael, and it's really about building capacity throughout the organization to do this work, and that I think is the key. And we've really kind of by launching this initiative and putting resources towards it. I mean, I think that's just forced us to invest in this and forced us to take the time. And it's hard, but I think putting it out there to our workforce, saying that we are going to do this and that we're going to follow through on this, and then also putting real resources, by resources I mean money, towards it. I think it really forces you to take it very seriously, and so that initiative is really about providing the training that our employees say they really need to do this work and do this, and then also, just like we said before, the work that goes into building capacity in empowering people, providing training, providing support, and also, as I alluded to earlier, providing the inspiration. Some of this work has involved re-inspiring people.
Yeah.
And a powerful moment for me recently was our city attorney watched a video that we sent her about some of the digital transformations that the VA has done recently around user-centered design and providing services to homeless vets, and kind of this video that shows the work that Marina Martin did with the VA. And our city attorney, her sister works for the VA, and after watching this, she said, that's the most inspired I've been in a very long time. And I think that's part of this work, is inspiring those about the possibilities and about what we can do, and that can take time because people are inspired in different ways. And so it takes a lot of work to get to know your organization, get to know the different types of folks and what they're going to need to do this type of work.
Yeah, and I think also just like your approach around, as we talked earlier, around kind of distributing the ownership, I think has probably helped to some degree, have champions within different agencies. So, on the culture stuff, we've talked about the culture stuff, but like on the technology, there are real technology issues that you have to deal with and know. And, as you guys have started to modernize a lot of this, what are the kind of driving principles or factors that help you determine that, this is the best technology, this is the best CRM, or this is the best, content management system, or whatever it is? What are the, what's driving you to select technology that you select?
That's a really easy answer for me. It's twofold. One is it's got to be easy. I mean, it's like the obvious answer, but it has to be easy. It has to be easy to use. It can't be hard to figure out. I'm never going to read a help desk manual. I'm never even going to use the help feature. Some people will. I won't. So if I can open it up and use it in 10 or 15 minutes without getting ultra frustrated, then I know I can deploy it and the rest of the users in the organization can use it. And then the second piece of that is, and this is a little bit of a shout out to Proud City and the website, I said if I, as assistant city manager, can be taught to, and actually our city manager did this, he said, Rebecca, I want to know how to update our website. If we can do that, and even though we only might do it a handful of times throughout the year, I want the technology to be able to be so, user-friendly isn't even the right word. I'm sure there's a better term that I don't even know exists, but so easy to use and also an update, like whatever the thing is that needs. I don't want to have to be like some crazy expert in technology in order to use it and in order to continue to use it and maintain it for new users.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, there's something to be said around if it's possible to use something that is a software as a service product so that it does continually update over time. And that also, like, just minimizing the reliance on our in-house servers and leveraging the cloud wherever we can. Again, we're a small city, and our IT department, oftentimes they are, they're strapped, they're stretched thin, and they're doing a lot of help desk stuff. And so really the less we have to rely on kind of the in-house servers is important. And I think just going back to like, is this technology meeting the needs of our users, and asking that really tough question, or it's not a tough question, it's a simple question. And is it future-proof? Is it the right size for our organization? And I think, what Cristine said is a really important point. It has to have a modern, intuitive interface, and it can't require a lot of specialized training because of onboarding and all sorts of kind of future-proofing needs.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think a lot of people, especially sort of, legacy approaches to technology, there's a huge services and support component where they're charging, by the issue or by the ticket. And I think that, that has sort of compelled, legacy vendors to just kind of emphasize that or rely on that in their business model. And I think as you see sort of SaaS solutions get created, they don't want to be touching a lot of people and helping them, through their chat. They want the product to just work. And, then the people on the other end are just using it and going about their day. And I think that, that's really, the difference in kind of a service approach and a SaaS approach as far as a business model. And we think about that a lot. I always say, I want my mom to be able to use this. So I think that, it's interesting to hear that you're talking less about technical specifications and more about, is this going to make my job easy or easier? So I think that's, it's an important point to bring to the front, because I think a lot of times it's all about technical specifications. So I guess is just a couple more questions. What, for the two of you, as you've kind of watched all this unfold, what has inspired you or been rewarding seeing San Rafael digital transformation, evolve. Cristine, you want to go first?
I don't know, Luke. Ask the question again.
What's inspired? How's this transformation inspired you? Or what is, how's this been rewarding to you?
Well, it's super rewarding and inspiring. It kind of keeps me going. I think I don't want to repeat what I said earlier, but it kind of goes along the lines of like, why did I get into government in the first place? Because I care about the community and I really want to make it a better place to be, and I care a lot about making government be, I don't want to say competitive, but as high functioning and delivering services to the public. We operate not on a bottom line, we operate on taxpayer dollars, and being mindful of those resources and using them as efficiently as possible is a huge responsibility that I take really seriously. And the excitement and inspiration comes from feeling like there's this kind of there's a lot of new possibilities and a lot of excitement and enthusiasm around government, and young people who are excited about working in government and have great ideas and are incredibly smart and motivated to make things better and make us, frankly, less bureaucratic, less status quo, faster paced, more responsive. Those things are they're why I do this job, and to know that that there's technology out there that we can partner with that can help move that along even more quickly, and have the experience of coming to your local government, to City Hall or wherever it is. And right now we have such low trust in government at all levels, and people typically don't expect to have this really fantastic, amazing, modern experience when you come to the public counter in a local government. And I think that we're trying to change that experience, kind of one moment at a time, or one process, or one technology tool at a time. And it is still kind of a slow process, but we're making progress, and that really is exciting.
Yeah, I guess I would just echo. I think digital transformation just really has the potential of attracting the next generation of workers into government and making it just an awesome career choice. And the low trust of government really gets me down. And I totally empathize and understand why it's low. There are times where I have low trust in certain types of government. And so I just think this really has the potential, especially at the local level, for building that trust. And that's pretty exciting to me. I just, when I think of like the government of the future and what it can look like when we really deliver services in a truly effective way, it just seems like a happier, more exciting experience for both the employees of government and then the public that's interacting with them. So I think I get excited about the potential, and then I also get really, really excited when we do these little things that make a big difference. So yeah.
Awesome. So Rebecca, this is the opportunity to get the big pay raise and the big promotion. What has Jim, who is the city manager of San Rafael, and Cristine done to really inspire?
Uh-oh. Are you still talking, Luke? We lost you. Oh, okay. Well, I know what he was going to ask, so let me answer it. So I think what Jim and Cristine have both done is they've given me autonomy. They have trusted me. And then they've also displayed a willingness to take measured risks. And I think that's been really key, that they're willing, they walk the talk when they say that we're going to be a government that is going to kind of, quote, fail fast, learn, continually improve. And so they've really put a lot of dedication and commitment and resources towards kind of the culture change that needs to go along with digital transformation. And they're also like willing to try new things and learn new things. I think we've gotten Cristine to somewhat understand how to use Google Doc.
Yeah,
you don't have to hit save, Luke. Did you know that?
I didn't, but I think I was there the day that you were starting to learn, or learning that you didn't have to hit save.
But I mean, I think that they're willing to try new things and to learn new things, and I think that that's inspiring. And I can't say enough about, I think our working relationship works really well in that we share a vision, we share kind of like where we see ourselves going, but we argue constantly about how we're going to get there, and in a really healthy way, and in a way that I think gets us where we want to go in a very thoughtful manner, because we challenge each other, and we have a lot of honest conversations. And I'm also just grateful to continue to learn from both of them every day, and be inspired and grateful that I have, two really great mentors.
Awesome. Well, good luck on that promotion and raise. The last question I'll close out with for you, Cristine, is, if you have any sort of parting advice for your colleagues around digital government, the other city managers or assistant city managers or mayors, across the country, what's your advice to them?
My advice is to make sure they have a Rebecca, and if they don't have one, they should go get themselves one, and be willing to let their Rebecca challenge them and teach them new things.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for, sharing your thoughts. I think, it's, when I say that, you two are sort of the, dynamic duo of local digital government, I mean that. And I think, just as I said in the beginning, it's been really great to watch, have a front row seat to, watching what the two of you have done to kind of lead a city, but also, be an example for, other cities across the world, really. So thank you. Ellis, I know you're going to close this out, but I think that we're all done.
All right, sounds good. Thanks again to you all for the great presentation, and thanks Cristine and Rebecca as well. And thanks to everyone for joining us. As a reminder, we'll record today's webinar and let you know by email when it's available online. So with that, I'll end today's webinar. Sorry, I'm changing location, but thank everyone for joining me, and have a great day.
You too. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.
Bye.